Good Thursday afternoon, everyone. It is the 4th. I think it's the 4th. It is the 4th. It is 4th of April. I haven't done a darn thing on this channel. A darn thing. And as you can see, I set up my own overlay. I created my own overlay. I'm very proud of myself for this, by the way. I am completely dumb when it comes to things like this. So with that out of the way, I am Spectre. This is going to become a more common thing that I do because, quite frankly, I should be getting back to what I was doing prior to getting involved in all this drama. So I figured I would do an easy show in terms of stuff that I actually know and have covered. So, sorry, I need to, I'm just really quickly putting out a tweet on this. So, obviously, we've had the huge issues over the past couple of months. Really, the last 8 to 9 months, you could say, with video games just being an absolute crapshoot. It has been just absolutely god awful. Really, that's really what it is. It's been a god awful thing for many games, and there have been some gems, obviously, but there's no denying that there have been huge issues with much of the gaming world, and we're kind of seeing them really come out now because a lot of the companies, not just AAA, but also small indie companies, quote unquote small indie companies, have been getting away with a lot of stuff, and now it's starting to really come back and bite them in the ass. And the two topics I'm going to be talking about today, the first one I really wasn't planning on talking about. Studio Wildcard has kind of been my whipping boy. It's kind of been the studio I've done the most videos on because it's just constant screw up after screw up after screw up. It's just constant, jacking everything up. It's just constant, we're sorry, we're going to improve. And once they, the majority of the team went to Atlas, well, what the hell is Atlas at this point? I kind of want to see something because I heard a rumor that Atlas is no longer in the top even 100 of top games. Really quickly going page. So it's not in the top 50 that I can see. 5 there, and then next. So yeah, it's no longer in the top 100. I actually don't know what it is. Let's look it up, huh? Current players. Wow. So Atlas's, I guess I'll bring this up really. So this is Atlas, and I hope you guys like this. This is what Atlas looks like right now. Came out in December 2018, and we heard constantly, it's in a good place, it's in a good place, it's doing good for early access. Look at that. Just look at that. You had peak players of almost 60,000, and now you're at about 10% of that. I mean, that's absolutely just atrocious. And apparently this entire team is starting to trickle back to Arc, by the way. So, they failed with Atlas. I don't care I do not care what people say at this point. I really don't. The truth of the matter is that they screwed up with Atlas. They screwed it up. And they just completely destroyed a new IP. Not surprising. Arc has not been doing that good. It's improved a bit, but overall it has not been a good thing to see. It has not been doing much better, I guess you could say. And it's, once again, not unexpected. Ark has just been riddled, absolutely riddled with scandal after scandal after scandal, screw up after screw up after screw up. You had the selling of a DLC, essentially a paid expansion during early access. Now, a lot of people gave them a break for that. That they, I was not one of them, but a lot of people did give them a break for that because they had just had a major lawsuit hit them, or the threat of a lawsuit. Trendy Entertainment was asking for, like, I think $600,000. I think it was like $600,000 or 600 million, excuse me. And they ended up settling it for 40 million. Around that time, Snail Games bought them, and then the DLC came out. And they tried to hide behind this claim of, we had always planned to put out a DLC literally at this time. We decided not to break with our plans. And the DLC, when it came out, was a lot better than the base game. It was actually a lot more polished than the base game. And so what ends up happening is players got really upset about this. We paid $30 for, we paid $30 for this early access game. And now you tell me that part of the team was working on a DLC when you aren't even out of pre-alpha. By their own words, they were in pre-alpha. They weren't even in alpha, right? It's little nuance like that. It's words like that that can really get people excited or temper criticism for much of what they're doing. So what ends up happening is they say, we're in pre-alpha. Okay, they're not in alpha. It gives them a little bit of leeway to go, look, we're just working on trying to, get this game going. That's all we're trying to do. We just want to get our game going. We just want to, give you guys something because you did pay for this. Okay, cool. But they had so many issues coming up, and then they put out this DLC when, by their own words, they're not even saying they're in alpha. So that was like the first real thing that pointed to the possibility, the very real possibility, that we were about to see a game that just shat the bed. It was going to shit the bed, and there was literally nothing that could be done at that point. We had a feeling it was going to happen. You have all these issues with, I got Steam, apparently. Let's get the hell out of that. My bad. You have huge issues with meshing, with exploiting, with hacking. The game doesn't enter, a released mode, a released form for years. It was supposed to come out, 2016, I think? I think it came out in early access in 2015, June 2015. So, really quick, I want to say it was that. It could have been 2016. Where? Wikipedia. There we go. Yeah, so it came out in early access June 2015. I got it July 2015. So I've been playing the game for really since it came out. Okay, I've been playing it since it came out. And you have this entire thing happen where it's screw up after screw up after screw up, and they're trying to brush it aside. Hey, it's not that bad, guys. It's not that bad. It's okay. Guys, it's okay. We're in early access, and you see this a lot of the time with a lot of games. Even with a lot of finished products, you see this happen. Oh, it's in pre-alpha. They'll get to it when it's in alpha. When it gets to alpha, oh, this is about putting new stuff into the game. They'll work on bug fixes in beta. Gets to beta. Well, they're slowly working on it. But when the game actually launches, then they'll actually, they'll get rid of all these bugs and they'll make the game better. Game launches. Well, it just came out. We need the first major patch to come out. First major patch comes out, nothing's fixed. I guess we have to wait until the first expansion, the first DLC. And you see that constantly with many of these companies. Many of these companies get away with this. We're going to claim, all this stuff. And Studio Wildcard is known for actually having sock accounts on Reddit and the like, where their entire point is to play up the game or to try to deflect criticism away from decisions made by the higher ups. They've done this before. They've admitted this. Every company really has it. Every company has it. But Wildcard definitely has it. They've really never hidden that fact from anyone. They never have. So it's like it or not, this is how it's going to be. And then they moved, once they did that, it took them 2 years, 3 years to get out of early access. Pretty much forced to. They were pretty much forced to get out of early access. But then you have the CEO or the president of the company saying to, I think it was PC Games N. I think it was. It could have been Kotaku or Polygon, but it was PC Games N, where he says, yeah, in the future, we're definitely going to use more of early access, and he tries to play it off as we're going to do it because we have this dedicated player base that just wants to be part of our games from the moment we talk about them to when they close down. We have all these people that want to. And the truth of the matter is that's not completely true. That's not completely true. The reason that they do it is because it's free QA. You are the QA team. You are the quality control, the quality assurance, whatever you want to call it. You are the beta testers. That's what Ark is. Ark is in beta at this point. It's not a fully released game, even though they raised it to $60. They tried to pull off a bunch of crap, and it failed. It failed for them. And it failed specifically because they didn't care. Why would they care, ladies and gentlemen? Why would they care? So what you end up seeing now is they're behind the curve on everything. They're behind on balancing things. They're still putting out incredibly broken things. The Mana Garmer, for example, has had, more nerfs than freaking Ret Paladins and Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm. It's been a broken creature since it came out. It's been nothing but nerf after nerf after nerf for a lot of creatures because, what else are you going to do with them? You really can't do anything. Extinction is a hot mess. Yeah, it's a pretty cool idea, but there are just so many bugs still with it. It came out in November. It's like 5 months later, there's still a bunch of issues. There's a bunch of meshing, of exploiting, and the like. And what ends up happening is, now you've got this huge game. You've got half the staff because a bunch of them went to Atlas. Chris Willoughby has done some good work taking over the entire thing, but overall, he has not fixed everything. He has not. There are a lot of issues. And so we get to the point now where a well-known streamer known as HOD Gaming. HOD Gaming does a lot of content for Ark. And when you're a small company like Studio Wildcard, a lot of your gaming, a lot of your publicity comes from these people, these content creators. That's why Studio Wildcard gave out, early access for all intents and purposes for Aberration and Extinction to streamers instead of the people who actually go through the coding and make mods. The modders would have been a great group to give early access to because a lot of them, like the developer of Anunnaki and Extinction Core, he actually rewrites entire sections of code to make his mod. He finds issues. And they find issues and they code everything. And Extinction Core and Anunnaki were absolutely fun to play. But you would think that you would want to bring them in. They didn't. They gave it to streamers. And why? Because streamers make them money. Atlas, who got into the game first? Streamers. Why? Because streamers give publicity. Streamers make them money. This is the kind of BS that ends up happening. And like it or not, this is how Studio Wildcard operates. Bethesda's the exact same way. They had this huge thing for streamers and content creators where they gave them actually, really good bags and everything. And that came out after the whole canvas nylon bag shenanigans, but whatever. A lot of these companies do this because that's how they make money. They get publicity. They get free publicity essentially from streamers. That's what they do. So HOD Gaming does, he's tired. He plays official PvP. As far as I know, he might do unofficial PvP, but he plays PvP and he streams a lot of PvP. He does videos with a lot of PvP, and he ends up doing a video because he's tired of the meshing. So he does this video. Let me see if I can actually bring it up. I'm gonna really quickly just bring it up. I'm just gonna bring up the video so that you can see, you can kind of watch it. I'm not gonna play the sound, but this is what he, this is essentially his video. And he calls it the Mesh Monkeys. He was doing a series on them, and he was having fun with it. He kind of did a faux documentary, and it actually was kind of funny to watch because it really showcased how even now, exploiting has been going around for years. It's been such a huge issue. It's been nothing but a headache for PvP, especially official PvP. But he ends up doing this video, and it gets a lot of traction. As you can see, it has 209,460 views. And the guy has 192,000 subscribers. So I think like last week or the week before, he was 185. I think he gained a crap ton of subscribers because, hey, guess what? The Streisand effect is real. So what ends up happening is he does this video. Studio Wildcard decides to ban him. He ends up being globally banned on the from BattlEye. He's globally banned by the studio. And let's make something very clear. He was banned for showing exploits. Studio Wildcard is not unique in that they ban people for showing exploits. A lot of companies do it. A lot of companies will ban you for showing exploits, showing you how to exploit their game, how to hack their game, how to glitch their game. World of Warcraft, for example, has had numerous instances of groups doing this. Now, to be fair, though, one of the most well-known ones, Paragon, also known as Insidia Gaming, there were a lot. They went by quite a few because they were a professional group. But for the most part, Wildcard would ban people for showing exploits. Insidia didn't get hit by it, but whatever. There was that whole thing about Kripparrian in Guild Wars 2, where a lot of streamers were banned all at once. And why? Because they were showing how to essentially abuse the RMT, the MTX store, and make a lot of in-game currency, a lot of in-game money and whatnot. And the truth of the matter is that while they are not unique to it, this has been something that's been going on for years. And because their customer service is absolutely atrocious, there's never any kind of real sense of fixing the underlying issues. The underlying issues are very well known. They're very well documented. People know about these problems, and the company doesn't care. The company has really just done a lot of work to not pay attention to it. Oh, we really don't care. We care. We'll pay lip service. Oh yeah, we care, guys. We care. We actually care. They don't care. They've never cared. Only when they start to get a lot of negative publicity do they come out and go, yeah, we care. We take this very seriously. But their banning and whatnot seems to be very unknown at this point. There was, 6, maybe 7 months ago where they did a huge ban on the global servers. They did dev wipes and they did bans for people who are exploiting and whatnot. And the biggest exploiter is a Chinese tribe called T. And what happens to T? Nothing happened to T. There's, there's speculation as to why that is. A lot of good speculation. This was a tribe that they were wiped, and somebody actually recorded post-wipe where a dev shows up and dev wipes their entire base, destroys everything they had. And the only point that they could point to was, we just raided and wiped T on this server. It's a possibility. There definitely seems to be some double standards in enforcement. So HOD Gaming ends up being banned. Now, he's no longer permanently banned. Let's make that very clear. But this is not new to Studio Wildcard. They are consistently making PR mistakes. And I'm going to call them mistakes, but that's really not what they are. They are complete screw-ups. They are complete mess-ups. And what ends up happening is HOD Gaming gets banned for this. No word on they're going to look into the meshing that he showed, how to exploit the game. It's just, you're gone. So a bunch of big YouTubers ended up picking up on it. The one that I watched, I was actually doing my own video. I was contemplating doing my own video, I should say. But I was hesitant to do it only because it's Studio Wildcard. I've kicked them enough while they're down. So I end up watching his video and he covers it. And if you haven't seen it, go to Sid Alpha's channel. Go watch Sid Alpha's video. Worth watching. I end up, let's see. So he takes the ban. He does things saying, hey, I've been banned. Studio Wildcard ends up putting out a statement, and let's read it. Now, I know that if you actually pay attention to Studio Wildcard, you've already seen this, but, and I'm pretty much a week late on this. That's fine. This is, as I said, this was not a video I wanted to do. And I know you hear that all the time from content creators, YouTubers, and whatnot. I didn't want to do this video, but I have to. I didn't want to, and the main reason is I've kicked them enough while they're down. We know Wildcard is a shitty company. We know their game developers are subpar. We know all this stuff about the company. We get it. We do get it. Okay, none of this is in any way, shape, or form new. It's not new information. So Cedric or Kedrick, or I don't know how there's like 5 different ways you can actually say that name, but whatever. We'll go with Cedric. Official statement regarding HOD Gaming and game exploits. Providing a fair, fun, and safe environment for everyone is something we take very seriously here at Wildcard. Building an enforcement team was the first step to making sure that people can enjoy ARC without fear of cheating. No, let's stop right there really quick. The enforcement team is subpar, lackluster. It's not big enough, I guess you could say. People are always afraid on official servers that they are going to be hit by meshers and exploiters. Because you don't do anything once the damage is done. Once the damage is done, that's it. You don't do anything. You dev wipe and you ban the people that were exploiting and meshing. All right? You don't give the resources back. You don't give them any help. You don't rebuild anything. All you do as a company is you say, sucks to be you. And you don't do anything about it. There's always the fear of cheating. I use fear as just, that's their word, not mine. There's going to be the fear of cheating because you don't get involved, for lack of a better phrase, once the damage is done. You don't fix it. You don't roll anything back. That's why I like private servers. Somebody exploits, somebody cheats, etc. Guess what? Server owner might roll it back, or they'll do everything they can to make sure that you get your stuff back, or you're in a solid place once once they ascertain everything. That's why official servers, that's part one of why official servers suck. Since the introduction of the enforcement team, we've noticed a considerable improvement in the overall quality of life of those playing on our official servers. More like you guys turn a blind eye to it. The six-man conquest servers, for example, well, you have T just completely destroying everything. They're locking down servers. They are, they're essentially violating the rules you set up for the six-man conquest servers. And what do? Yeah, we're gonna hand the six-man conquest servers over to the Snail Games. We're not gonna do anything about this. That's the enforcement that goes on. That is their enforcement team. In a nutshell. In a nutshell. In severe situations like someone meshing or duping or spreading information related to such, our first instinct is to try to take action with the intention of preserving the integrity of our official server network. Here's the problem. HOD Gaming did all of this on single player. He didn't do this on the official servers. They know this. They knew this at the time. They still banned him for showing it. Again, not unique to Wildcard. Pretty much every company, if you make public an exploit and show people how to do it, they will throw out a ban. I'm not going to fault them for, banning first and asking questions later. I am, however, going to fault them and blame them for not fixing the exploits, for not having a quality control team, a development team that can find this stuff before it goes live. Not like it's one or two ways to exploit and mesh in Extinction. There are a lot of them. The island has been out since the game first came out in 2015. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Still ways to mesh in there. Center and Ragnarok both have meshing. Aberration has meshing. Scorched Earth, the way plays it, but there's meshing. Point is there's meshing on every map. Doesn't matter how long it's been out. And they always have an excuse as to why they haven't fixed it. I think it was the right hand who pretty much came out and said, yeah, you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's not that easy to actually fix such things. And a guy who developed a game using the engine came out and actually wrote out this massive thesis on how they could actually do so. And they ignored him. When someone is banned as a result of our code of conduct, there is an appeal process that allows for a fair review of the situation. No, there isn't. No, there isn't. They actually tell you we do not allow appeals of bans. We do not allow appeals of bans. We will not talk about why you were banned, and we will not allow an appeal of a ban. That's not an appeals process. That's not an appeals process. There are always two sides to every story, and we want to remain impartial and hear both. Bullshit again. Any issues that violates our code of conduct is subject to a fair appeal process. They're really hitting you with, we have a fair appeal process. When you're reiterating, you have a fair appeal process, it means you don't. It means it's lazy. It means that you don't have that, ladies and gentlemen. It means that none of that really matters. You don't actually have it. You're trying to really, I can't remember what the psychological term, but you're reinforcing positive things. I don't remember what it was called. God dang. But they don't have a fair appeals process. They've never had one. All right. They've never had one. When things land in the gray area, our first instinct is to do whatever is in our power to prevent abuse. Upon further review of the situation involving HOD Gaming, we felt that it was not deserving of a permanent ban. Videos showing exploit techniques are admittedly a gray area when it comes to enforcement, which is just one of the reasons why the appeals process exists for bans. Several changes each patch are aimed at fixing exploits, but the methods that are used are continually evolving. As such, we are always trying to improve our procedures when it comes to situations that affect the player base. We use these situations to take a look at our internal process and identify areas where we can do better or provide more clarification. All right, so here's the one thing that pretty much everybody agrees on, PvP and PvE. Maybe our P servers don't, but PvP definitely agrees. The chair needs to go. There's no reason to have the chair. It serves no purpose. It is the main way of exploiting and meshing. Why haven't you gotten rid of it? That's literally that. It's like every time you see one of these things happen, it's, oh, well, somebody used the chair. Oh, somebody used the Karkanos to go through. I guess that's not the chair. No, it's still the chair. Get rid of the chair, and there goes a bunch of exploiting. There goes a bunch of meshing. That's not even accounting for the lack of development talent. Uh, let's see. We use these situations to take a look at our internal process and identify areas where we can do better or provide more clarification. There are established methods for escalating exploits to the development team that exist to prevent the spread of information to the general public. The more widely known an exploit is, the more likely it is to be exploited. In these instances, you should file your report on Survive the Ark. You can find the link to report abuse or bugs under the support header. Oh, you mean the customer service team that doesn't exist? The customer service team that really, I'm going to be honest here. They don't speak English. Okay. You very clearly outsourced it to China. Probably to Snail Games' similar customer service team that doesn't care. They've never cared. If you look at a lot of the people who put up tickets and they post to Reddit, there's no response to it. It says, solved though. Or you get a canned response saying, we'll look into it, and nothing ever happens. This is not something new. This has been going on for years. They keep trying to tell us we have a fair system for appealing bans. What are those? What's that system? They've never expounded upon it. What is that system? You've never told us anything about it. You just say it exists. You also tell us the quality control team exists. Really? The quality control team exists? We've had nothing but issues with this game since day one. And you've made it very clear that we are the quality control team. So I guess in a way it does exist. We're the quality control team, which means that nothing is actually checked before a patch goes live. That's why every patch always has something going on, and almost every patch has some change rolled back because, well, what do you know? It didn't work. It didn't work. So, what do you do? What do you do? The truth of the matter is that right now, not much that can be done. Not much. And this is going to continue to happen because Studio Wildcard doesn't care. They've got your money. It's always been about money to them. Make that very clear. It's always been about money to them. Anyone who says it hasn't is lying to you. We want to make sure that everyone can enjoy their experience on our official network and will continue to take exploit matters seriously. As always, we value community feedback and encourage you to share it with us. Thanks for your continued support and passion for the game. So that's their statement. Pretty much just ignoring the underlying issues. That their game is just a bug-infested piece of garbage. There are so many issues relating to the game that it's, by and large, an insult to continue to play it. At least on official. On unofficial, you can get a ton of mods to improve quality of life. You know, S+, which they're slowly integrating into the game, has been out for years on unofficial servers. Almost every unofficial server runs it. Even ones that say minimal mods, they run S+, because S+ makes the game playable. It makes building viable. That's what ends up happening. HOD Gaming got banned. He got unbanned. He got unbanned, but it's only because there was such huge backlash on it. Studio Wildcard has made it very clear that they will respond. If it looks like PR is going to go down the shitter, guess what? We're going to respond, and we're gonna do what we can. We're going to do what we can in order to make sure that our game survives. I understand from a business perspective. I understand that from a business perspective. But that doesn't excuse all the BS that's been happening. It doesn't excuse the lackluster game development. It doesn't excuse their decision to completely mess up a bunch of stuff. None of that is excused. Of course, knock something over while fixing the cord on my microphone. Of course. Pick it up. Probably should have had it there to begin with. Oh well. I'm always knocking something over. Anyways. So that's HOD gaming in ARC. This is not going to improve. This is not going to improve. I mean, look at the general responses. Facepalm confused. This is the responses that they've gotten. There's nothing that can be done at this point because Wildcard really just makes it clear they really don't care at this point. They're waiting for their next, moneymaker. Atlas sure as shit is not going to be it at this point. The question at this point is, what are they going to pull from what are they going to pull in from Atlas to ARC? That's the question. It'll be kind of interesting to watch and see if Jeremy Stiglitz, the reason that they were bought by Snail Games, if he comes back to the project or he's going to move on to another one, because he seems like the kind of guy who he moves on to projects very quickly. I will not be surprised if he moves on to a new one. If you actually go to the the ARC Reddit. I apologize for this being light. Apparently there's no dark mode for this, which is really weird. But anyways, it's a lot of requests for changes right now, but some decisions that are made for the newest patch are getting a lot of playtime because it was not prepared properly. Wasn't prepared properly. Oh, the installation size of ARC. 190 gigs for ARC. That is larger. That is about I'll say about 3 to 4 times the size of World of Warcraft in all of its expansions. I think World of Warcraft is like 50 gigs total. 190 gigs for this. In fact, really quick, I'm going to go to my Steam library. I want to see actually how much is taking up because I don't have a lot of mods. So I'm gonna go to my library real quick and see what that looks like. Of course, it's taking forever to load up because it's updating. It is updating. But I know it's over like 130 gigs. I know it's over 130 gigs. But in any case, let's stop kicking Wildcard while it's down. I mean, we've done that plenty, I think. We have done that plenty. Let's head over to BioWare. Let's head over to the most recent failure. Anthem. But before we do, I want to take a moment. I'm gonna really quickly grab something to drink. I will be right back. We're gonna go over Jason Schreier's article on Kotaku about the way that Anthem went wrong. So stay tuned for this. Alrighty, I'm back. Obviously, I have my my game up. Steam, as you can see, I came up. But let's really quickly let's check the properties. Yeah, 170,000 gigs, or 170 gigs rather. That's how big this game is, with like minimal. I think it's like 8 add-ons. That's it. So that should tell you how big this game is. That should tell you how big the game is. 170 gigs. So now Jason Schreier ended up doing an article on Anthem. Now, Anthem has been an absolute disaster for not Valve, excuse me. For BioWare and EA. Been an absolutely unmitigated disaster. And he goes into it in this article. It is pretty bad. It is pretty bad as to why it's like that. I was going to do my own video on it, but I was like, you know what? I can't even get to max level. That's how bad it is. And I like to do, if I'm going to do a review, I'm going to do a significant portion of the game. I'm going to get to the end game, and I'm going to look at the end game and give you an idea of that, end game PvP, end game PvE, etc. That is what I am going to do. Because if I'm going to do a review, if I'm going to criticize, if I'm going to critique, then I'm going to do it in such a way that it gives an all-encompassing an overview of the game itself. And if it's a game that just does not interest me, well, I guess I'll have to say that, won't I? I will have to say that. Right? That's how it is. How it's supposed to be. How BioWare's Anthem went wrong. It wasn't even supposed to be called Anthem. Just days before the annual E3 convention in June 2017, when the storied studio BioWare would reveal its newest game, the plan had been to go with a different title, Beyond. They even printed out Beyond t-shirts for the staff. Then, less than a week before the Los Angeles press conference held by BioWare's parent company, Electronic Arts, word came down that securing the rights to the trademark would be too difficult. So they waited, like, stupidly. They waited how long in order to determine if this would be a viable option? That's some bull crap, if you ask me. That really is some bull crap, if you ask me. Let's see, where was I? Beyond was ruled out. The leadership team quickly switched to one of their backup options, Anthem. But whereas Beyond had been indicative of what BioWare hoped the game would be, you'd go out beyond the walls of your fort and into the dangerous wilds around you, Anthem didn't really mean much. Everybody was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. What does this have to do with anything? Said one person who worked on the game. Just days before their game's announcement, the team at BioWare had a brand new name that nobody really understood. Such a major last-minute upheaval might seem strange to an outside observer, but on Anthem, it was common. Very few things went right in the development of BioWare's latest game, an online cooperative shooter that was first teased in mid-2012, but spent years floundering in pre-production. It's been 5 years in pre-production, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that 2012 is when it was first teased. 2017 is the E3 announcement. So in pre-production, it was there for 5 years. 5 freaking years. I know. Well, what about Star Citizen? Look, we're not going to talk about that. We already know that's never leaving pre-production, okay? He's just taking your money, and God knows, he space hookers and space below. That's what Chris Roberts is doing at this point. Many features weren't finalized or implemented until the very final months, and to some who worked on the project, it wasn't even clear what kind of game Anthem even was until the E3 demo in June of 2017, less than 2 years before it actually came out. Later, they came up with an explanation for the name. The game's planet was enveloped by something called the Anthem of Creation, a powerful, mysterious force that left environmental cataclysms across the world, which I still don't get, even to, I played the game for at least, 36 hours. I don't get the Anthem of Creation thing. I really don't. When Anthem launched in February of 2019, it was panned by fans and critics. Today, it has a 55 on the review aggregation site Metacritic, BioWare's lowest score since the company was founded in 1995. Remember, BioWare is the company that brought us Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, Mass Effect up until Andromeda, Dragon Age. Okay? They've got a track record of success. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. But they put out 2 critical flops. Andromeda, some would even say Dragon Age Inquisition was not up to par. It was okay. It was playable. It was enjoyable. But Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem have been their 2 flops. And it's been one after another. People would say Star Wars The Old Republic is also a flop at this point. I would agree. I would agree. Star Wars The Old Republic is nothing at this point. It is nothing like it was at the beginning of the beginning. It's nothing like it was at the beginning. And even then, it wasn't that good, in my opinion. There was a lot of missed chances. There was a lot of it. All right, a lot of it. The developer wants to know for ambitious role-playing games like Dragon Age, and the original Mass Effect trilogy has now released 2 critical flops in a row, following 2017's disappointing Mass Effect Andromeda. Although hardcore fans have put their faith in BioWare to continue fixing Anthem's bugs and improving its mechanics, especially since Bungie's Destiny, a similar game, had a rough launch and eventually recovered. Also, The Division did. The Division had a rough launch, and they fixed it. It was going strong even before The Division 2, and now The Division 2 has come out, and it's going strong. The Division 2 is actually going very strong right now. And I'll get into The Division in a bit. Few were happy with the initial release. Anthem wasn't just buggy and thin on content. It felt half-baked, like it hadn't been play-tested and tweaked enough by developers with experience playing other looter shooters. In the weeks after launch, there appeared to be a major new problem every day. Fans have speculated endlessly as to how Anthem went so awry. Was it originally a single-player role-playing game like BioWare's previous titles? Did EA force BioWare to make a Destiny clone? Did they strip out all of the good missions to sell later as DLC? That's a possibility. It is EA we're talking about. Is the loot system secretly driven by an elaborate AI system that keeps track of everything you do so it can get you to spend more money on the game? I don't know about that one. I think it was a 4chan theory. I don't know. The answer to all these questions is no. Once again, Jason, it is EA. They might have stripped all the good missions to sell later as DLC. Can't really say on that. This account of Anthem's development, based on interviews with 19 people who either worked on the game or adjacent to it, all of whom were granted anonymity because they were not authorized to talk with about Anthem's development, is a story of indecision and mismanagement. It's a story of technical failings, as EA's Frostbite engine continued to make its life miserable for many of BioWare's developers. An understaffed department struggled to serve their team's needs. It's a story of 2 studios, one in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and another in Austin, Texas, that grew resentful toward one another thanks to a tense, lopsided relationship. It's a story of a video game that was in development for nearly 7 years, but didn't enter production until the final 18 months, thanks to big narrative reboots, major design overhauls, and a leadership team said to be unable to provide a consistent vision and unwilling to listen to feedback. Perhaps most alarming, it's a story about a studio in crisis. Dozens of developers, many of them decade-long veterans, have left BioWare over the past 2 years. Some who have worked on BioWare's longest-running office in Edmonton talk about depression and anxiety. Many say they or their coworkers had to take stress leave, a doctor-mandated period of weeks or even months' worth of vacation for their mental health. One former BioWare developer told me they would frequently find a private room in the office, shut the door, and just cry. People were so angry and sad all the time, they said. Said another, depression and anxiety are an epidemic within BioWare. All right, so I'm going to stop right there for a second. I'm not surprised to hear that. Again, BioWare, EA, all these AAA companies are very well known for forcing people to work really long hours, even when it's not a crunch time. They're very well known for this. You know, small indie studios, you expect it. You know, a game's coming out. You know, they're about to launch a game, and it's crunch time for like the last 2 weeks. Before that, it's like a normal. It's like a normal, just normal work days. Maybe like 10-hour work days or something like that. But generally speaking, you don't see that until crunch time. BioWare, EA, you know, Blizzard even to an extent, but Activision definitely. It's always crunch time. They're always telling people to do this. You have to do it. And if you know, overtime is voluntary. Okay, overtime is voluntary. You think you're going to keep your job though if they decide, you know what, you're not engaging in the the voluntold overtime, the mandatory voluntary overtime. You think you're gonna keep your job at the end of the day? No, you're probably not. They're gonna say you're not a team player. You're just thinking of yourself, and they'll get rid of you. It's actually not that uncommon, believe it or not. It's really not that uncommon. I actually cannot count the amount of stress casualties we had on Mass Effect, Andromeda, or Anthem, said a third former BioWare developer in an email. A stress casualty at BioWare means someone had such a mental breakdown from the stress, they're just gone for 1 to 3 months. Some come back, some don't. EA and BioWare declined to comment on the story. They have commented. I'm going to go over that. Among those who work or have worked at BioWare, there's a belief that something drastic needs to change. Many at the company now grumble about the success of Dragon Age Inquisition. Was one of the worst things that could have happened to them. The third Dragon Age, which won Game of the Year in 2014, was the result of a brutal production process plagued by indecision and technical challenges. Now, I've done project lead. I've done that plenty of times. As the leader, you need to have a vision. You need to have goals. You need to be able to say, look, here's what I want to do. Here's how we're going to get it done. If you can't do that, you're going to be plagued by indecision. You're going to be plagued by your people not knowing what's going on. And that's going to cause them to, one, doubt themselves and then doubt you. I guess you really switch that up. They doubt you and then they doubt themselves. And that's the worst thing for morale. That is the worst thing that could happen during a project, especially a big, ambitious project like this. And that's exactly what this is. It was a huge project. It was ambitious as all hell. All hell. But because of the hell, you know, because of everything else, but it was very difficult of the to hell. You know, as a project, because of everything else, you have to know what you're doing. It was very difficult of the to that. Apparently, YouTube sound was turned on. I apologize. But you have to know what you're doing. You have to have a plan. You have to have a vision. You have to have goals. Otherwise, you're destined to fail. You can't just go in and go, okay, we're going to do this. Well, how? We'll burn that bridge when we come to it. You can't do it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. Let's see. It was mostly built over the course of its final year, which led to lengthy crunch hours and lots of exhaustion. Proper prior planning prevents piss-poor performance, ladies and gentlemen. Don't procrastinate. It won't help you. Some of the people in Edmonton were so burnt out, said one former BioWare developer. They were like, we needed Dragon Age Inquisition to fail in order for people to realize that this isn't the right way to make games. Within the studio, that's a term called BioWare magic. It's a belief that no matter how rough a game's production might be, things will always come together in the final months. The game will always coalesce. It happened on the Mass Effect trilogy, on Dragon Age Origins, and on Inquisition. Veteran BioWare developers like to refer to production as a hockey stick. It's flat for a while, and then it suddenly jolts upward. Even when a project feels like a complete disaster, there's a belief that with enough hard work and enough difficult crunch, it'll all come together. Again, why are you going to that point? Why? Why are you getting to that point? You shouldn't be. You should not be getting to the point where you're saying crunch time is what will make everything better, because you're only going to burn out people. You're going to make them want to quit. You structure everything to work over multiple months. Years even. I mean, this was in pre-production for what? 5 years? 5 years of pre-production. And it was constant changes in how they wanted everything to be. Constant changes. Again, if you don't have a vision, you're doomed to fail. After the high-profile failure of Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, it has become clear to current and former BioWare employees that this attitude is no longer working. In recent years, BioWare has done serious damage to its reputation as a premier RPG developer. Maybe the hockey stick approach is no longer viable, or maybe, just maybe, that sort of production practice was never really sustainable in the first place. Well, no crap, Jason. Thank you for pointing out something that is absolutely well known to anybody who's done Project Lead on a dang thing. You can't go in and expect everything to come together in the last couple of months when you've ignored everything for years. It just doesn't work like that. It never has. At the beginning, they called it Dylan, Project Dylan. In late 2012-2013, while finishing up the Mass Effect trilogy, BioWare director Casey Hudson and a small team of longtime Mass Effect developers started work on a project that they hoped would be the Bob Dylan of video games, meaning something that would be referenced by video game fans for years to come. Even within BioWare, it was a mystery project. You needed a password to get into the wiki, according to one person who was on it. For a while, the team stayed small. Most of BioWare staff were on Dragon Age Inquisition, which needed all hands on deck in order to ship by the end of 2014. By the way, Casey Hudson had left the company, and he's now coming back right here. I think some people are seeing our support for our developers named in the article as dismissing the need to continue making improvements in our workplace. Not at all. He continues. Part of what interested me about returning to BioWare was the challenge of building a new leadership team around solving precisely these problems. We have more to do, but creating a happy and rewarding work environment remains our top priority. So Casey Hudson's coming back to the company, ladies. He is coming back. Take that as you will. The early ideas for Dylan, which we'll call Anthem from now on for clarity, were ambitious and changing constantly, according to people who were on the project. As is typical during the sort of ideation phase, nobody knew what the game would look like yet. They just wanted to see what might be cool. It would be an action game, certainly, and you'd be able to play it with your friends. The goal was to get away from traditional sci-fi and fantasy, so the game would feel distinct from Mass Effect and Dragon Age. One concept that quickly emerged was the idea of dangerous, hazard-filled planet. Anthem would be set on a hostile alien world, and in order to go out into the wilderness, you'd need a robot suit, a realistic NASA-inspired robot suit. The pitch was simple, Iron Man, but less cartoony. Over the months, the core concept started to crystallize. Anthem's planet would be sort of like the Bermuda Triangle of this universe, with an inexorable gravity that was constantly pulling in alien ships and hazards. As a result, the world would be lethal and full of dangerous creatures. You are the bottom of the food chain, and everything is significantly more powerful than you, said one person who worked on the game. When describing these early iterations on Anthem, developers have made comparisons to Dark Souls, Darkest Dungeon, and even Shadow of the Colossus. There would be big, scary creatures out in the world, and there are big creatures out in the world. The Titans are absolutely, ain't nothing to mess with. That being said, it's like you miss one thing and you're down to like a sliver of health. It's like you get hit by one of the rings of fire and your HP is down to like a sliver. That's it. Oh, let's see. One prototype allowed the player to attach themselves to a giant monster. Others centered on the atmosphere, the weather, and environmental effects. The idea was going to be that there were all these levers that could be pulled internally, so there'd be different events happening at all times, said a developer. You'd be out somewhere and an electrical storm would happen at random and you had to survive it. We had an early demonstration of this where the environment was dynamic, and by pulling levers, we could change it from summer to winter to fall. You'd see the snow hitting the ground, hitting the trees. There were states of the build where that was being demonstrated, and that we could see this was something you could actually accomplish. We saw a small glimpse of these prototypes at E3 2014, when BioWare showed a teaser trailer for the as-yet untitled game that would eventually become Anthem. The final game would have nothing even close to those teases. No kidding. All the teases were just that. Teases. Please buy our game. It looks really cool, doesn't it? Don't expect it, but it looks really cool, don't it? Anthem was always envisioned as an online multiplayer game, according to developers who worked on it, but it wasn't always a looter shooter, the kind of game where you'd endlessly grind missions for new weapons. In these early versions, the idea was that you'd embark from the city and go out on expeditions with your friends, staying out in the world as long as you could survive. You'd use a robotic exosuit and you'd fight monsters with melee and shooting attacks. But the focus was less on hoarding loot and more on seeing how long you could survive. One mission, for example, might take you and a squad to the center of a volcano, where you'd have to figure out why it was erupting, kill some creatures, and then fight your way back. That was the main hook, said an Anthem developer. We're going out as a team, going to try to accomplish something as a team, then come back and talk about it. Along the way, you could scavenge or salvage alien ships for parts and bring them back to your base in order to upgrade your weapons or enhance your suit. It was really interesting, said one person who worked on it. It really struck a chord with a lot of the people who were working on it originally. What remained unclear during this process was how many of these ideas and prototypes would actually work at scale. Dynamic environments and giant creatures might perform nicely in a controlled environment, but would the Anthem team really be able to make those features work in an online, open-world game played by thousands and thousands of people? And would Frostbite, the volatile video game engine that BioWare was now using for all of its projects, really support all those features? Frostbite is a terrific engine. It's a good engine. You want to make really great cutscenes. You want to make really good backgrounds. Frostbite's the way to go. Really good. If you look at Anthem itself, the terrain, the background, it's absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous. It really is. But for an MMO or a multiplayer RPG kind of thing, it's not that good. A lot of things that you require in an MMORPG or an RPG or an MMO, whatever you want to call it, you have to build from the ground up. Like the inventory idea, you have to build that from the ground up. You have to start from scratch with that. There's a lot of stuff that you have to build from scratch when it comes to Frostbite. And that's why it wasn't a good idea. But because it's the proprietary engine of EA and because BioWare is owned by EA, they're stuck using it, which means they're, for all intents and purposes, they're set up to fail when it comes to something like this. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. As these questions lingered, the Anthem team faced a major shakeup. In August 2014, as they continued to prototype and dream about their game, they lost their leader. Casey Hudson, who had directed the beloved Mass Effect trilogy and was supposed to be creative director on Anthem, was departing. The foundation of our new IP in Edmonton was complete, he wrote in a letter to the studio. And the team is ready to move forward into pre-production on a title I think will redefine interactive entertainment. John Warner, a relatively new hire who had worked for Disney before joining EA in 2011, took on the role of game director. BioWare veterans like to describe Casey Hudson's Mass Effect team as the Enterprise from Star Trek. They all did what the captain said, and they were all laser-focused on a single destination. By comparison, they called the Dragon Age team a pirate ship, meandering from port to port until it reached its final destination. Now, the Enterprise no longer has Jean-Luc Picard. Still, members of the Anthem team say they remained happy. Dragon Age Inquisition shipped at the end of 2014 to critical acclaim, and many of those developers moved over to Anthem, where they found a team full of high hopes and ambitious ideas. EA had these team health reports, said one. Anthem's morale was among the highest in all of EA. It was really, really good for quite a while. Everybody saw there was so much potential in these early prototypes. Potential was always the word there. Anthem has a lot of potential even to this day. That's the truth. It has a lot of potential. I do like the flying. I do like the fact that you can fight in 3 dimensions instead of, X and Y. Now you have the Z dimension, the vertical dimension to actually fight in, not just standing over a cliff and firing down at enemies. You can actually fly for a bit. You can hover for a bit and shoot down at people. That's actually pretty cool. But there's also no denying that, you know, it's got a basic combat system and it's definitely eye cancer. It's eye cancer. It just gets, there's so much stuff going on the screen that's very easy to lose out and not be able to recognize exactly what's going on to you. One BioWare developer who hadn't yet moved to the Anthem team recalled hearing these colleagues talk about how much better they had it than the people who were stuck on Mass Effect Andromeda. Which at the time was going through serious struggles thanks to technical challenges and significant directional changes. Surely, they thought, they couldn't happen to Anthem. We took so much time to get the experience correct, said another person who worked on the game. I think that's why morale was so high. I knew we had taken the time to really refine what we wanted the game to be about. Now we just had to go and produce it. All right, so you got a picture of what you want. You kind of got an idea of what you want to do. You got some goals set. Do you have the proper path set up to do it? We'll see. And that's always the issue for a lot of projects, is the challenges that come up. They kind of throw roadblocks in the way of your roadmap. That will always be an issue. It doesn't matter how small the project is. You know, you're generally going to have roadblocks show up. A good leader will work to overcome it. They won't bitch and moan about the problem. They'll come with solutions. They'll come up with solutions to get over that. Something I had to learn. It's something everybody has to learn if they want to be a successful project manager. Just how it is. Question was, how would they do that? As development progressed, it became clear that some of the Anthem team's original ideas either wouldn't work or weren't quite solidified enough to be implemented. Take traversal, for example. The mandate was that Anthem's world would be massive and seamless, but how would you get around? The team played around with prototypes, exploring different ways in which the exosuit could move vertically across the world. For a long time, they thought it'd be climbing up the sides of mountains and ledges, but they couldn't get that quite right. Early iterations of flying, which developers say was removed from and re-added to Anthem several times. The flight mechanics were removed and re-added several times. This is kind of one of the sticking points of Anthem about why, you know, it got a positive review at all, was the flight. It was removed and then put back in, and then removed again and put back in. That actually explains why there's no real flying missions. You'd fly from point A to point B, but there's nothing really like, there's no aerial combat or anything like that. Nothing like that. That kind of gives you an idea of the kind of BS that's been, you know, that might have been going on, ladies and gentlemen. It sucks, doesn't it? That sucks to hear. Let's see. We're more like gliding, and members of the Anthem team say it was tough to get the system feeling all that fun. Every time they changed the traversal, it meant changing the world design accordingly, flattening and stretching terrain to accommodate the latest movement style. At least they were actually thinking about that. Okay, we're going to do this. Maybe we want to look at the terrain, figure that out, because it's pretty easy to put a bunch of mountains and large hills if you can fly over everything. But if you have to climb up stuff, well, that's not as fun. If you have to run everywhere, mountains blocking you, unless it's a Skyrim horse, you're not going to be able to really get over that. Sorry, that's just how it is. So at least they were thinking about that. That's actually good to hear. There were experiments with procedural encounters where dynamic creatures and environmental hazards would spawn randomly from the world, but those weren't working too smoothly either. That took a long time, said one developer. The game was super reliant on this procedural system that just wasn't fun. Procedurally generated content can be fun. All right, it can be. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it can be pretty fun. It can be. I tend to enjoy it. The story started changing drastically too. Early 2015, veteran Dragon Age writer David Gator moved over to Anthem, and his version of the story looked a lot different than the ideas with which they'd been experimenting for the past few years. Gator's style was traditional BioWare. Big, complicated villains, ancient alien artifacts, and so on. I'm just going to be honest here. The Monitor is not that good of a villain. He's very lackluster. He's not going to be memorable in the least. He's not. And he's really the only bad guy they had. He's not going to be memorable in the least. When asked for comment on this, Gator said in an email that when he'd started on the project, Anthem design director Preston Wadamaniak had pushed him in a science fantasy direction. I was fine with that, as fantasy is more my comfort zone anyway, but it was clear from the outset that there was a lot of opposition to the change from the rest of the team, he said. Maybe they assumed the idea for it came from me. I'm not sure, but comments like it's very Dragon Age kept coming up regarding any of the work me or my team did, and not in a complimentary manner. There were a lot of people who wanted to say over Anthem's story and kept articulating a desire to do something different without really being clear on what that was, outside of it just not being anything BioWare had done before, which was apparently a bad thing. From my perspective, it was rather frustrating. Gator left BioWare in early 2016. As time passed, I didn't feel keen to play the game that I was working on, he told me, which led to new writers for Anthem and a total story reboot, which is terrible when you're already talking about a game that's been in pre-production for, at this point, 4 years. It's not good. Let's see. That led to even more chaos. As you can imagine, writing for BioWare sets the foundation for all the games, said one developer. When writing is unsure of what it's doing, it causes a lot of destruction to a lot of departments. Okay, that kind of makes sense. If you don't understand the story, don't know what the story is going to be, how can the art department actually put together a bad guy? How can it do X, Y, and Z? You know, I can understand that. Instability had become par for the course on the Anthem team, as Hudson's departure left a void that proved tough to fill. The job of steering Anthem now fell to the creative leadership team, a group that included game director John Warner, design director Preston Wadamaniak. I can't pronounce that. I'm just going to call him Wadaman. Art director Derek Watts, animation director Parrish Lay, and a handful of other Mass Effect veterans who had been on Anthem since the beginning. Some current and former BioWare employees feel a lot of resentment toward this group. And in interviews, many who worked on Anthem accused the leadership team of indecision and mismanagement. The root cause of all this was the lack of vision, said one former BioWare developer. What are we making? Please tell us. The recurring theme was there was no vision, there was no clarity, there was no single director saying, this is how it all works together. They never seemed to settle on anything, said that person. They were always looking for something new, said another. I think most people on the team felt like we didn't know exactly what the game was or what it was supposed to be because it kept changing so much. The most common anecdote relayed to me by current and former BioWare employees was this. A group of developers are in a meeting. They're debating some creative decision, like the mechanics of flying or the lore behind the Scar alien race. Some people disagree on the fundamentals. And then, rather than someone stepping up and making a decision about how to proceed, the meeting would end with no real verdict, leaving everything in flux. That would just happen over and over, said one Anthem developer. Stuff would take a year or two to figure out because no one really wanted to make a call on it. Keep in mind, said another Anthem developer, everyone had hard decisions to make that we'd never done before. New IP, new genre, new technology, new style, everything was new. Throughout 2015 and 2016, it appeared to the Anthem team that they were accomplishing very little. They struggled with the online infrastructure. They hadn't figured out how missions would work. And while they had built a few environments and creatures, it still wasn't clear exactly what the basic gameplay might look like. The story was changing constantly, and progress on the game grew sluggish. One early idea was that there would be multiple cities, which eventually turned into one city. And it's not a city. And player-created outposts, which eventually turned into one city, and a mobile strider base, which eventually turned into a single fort. Those earlier survival ideas melted away. They were still figuring out core parts of the IP, like crafting material, Ember, how technology worked, that sort of thing. said one former BioWare developer. The whole back-end architecture and everything wasn't figured out yet. At the same time, BioWare studio leadership had to focus much of its attention on Mass Effect Andromeda, a game that was causing headaches for just about everyone, and whose rapidly approaching release date was set in stone. Put another way, Anthem might have started to look like it was on fire, but Andromeda was already nearly burnt to the ground. Complicating these problems further was the fact that sometimes when the Anthem leadership team did make a decision, it would take weeks or even months for them to see it in action. There were a lot of plans, said a developer, where by the time they were implemented, it was a year later and the game had evolved. Explanation for this lie can be summed up in one word, a word that had plagued many of EA studios for years now, most notably BioWare and now defunct Visceral Games. A word that can still evoke a mocking smile or sad grimace from anyone who spent any time with it. That word, of course, is Frostbite, the game engine. Frostbite is full of razor blades, one former BioWare employee told me a few weeks ago, aptly summing up the feelings of perhaps hundreds of game developers who had worked at Electronic Arts over the past few years. Frostbite is a video game engine, or a suite of technology that is used to make a game. Created by the EA-owned Swedish studio DICE in order to make Battlefield shooters, the Frostbite engine became ubiquitous across Electronic Arts this past decade, thanks to an initiative led by former executive Patrick Soderlund to get all of its studios on the same technology. By using Frostbite rather than a third-party engine like Unreal, those studios could share knowledge and save a whole lot of money in licensing fees. BioWare first shifted to Frostbite for Dragon Age Inquisition in 2011, which caused massive problems for that team. Many of the features those developers had taken for granted in previous engines, like a save load system and a third-party camera, simply did not exist in Frostbite, which meant the Inquisition team had to build them all from scratch. Mass Effect Andromeda ran into similar issues. Surely the third time could be the charm, right? As it turned out, Anthem was not the charm. Using Frostbite to build an online-only action game, which BioWare had never done before, led to a host of new problems for BioWare's designers, artists, and programmers. Frostbite is like an in-house engine with all the problems that entails. It's poorly documented, hacked together, and so on, with all the problems of an externally sourced engine, said one former BioWare employee. Nobody you actually work with designed it, so you don't know why this thing works the way it does, and this is named the way it is. Why this is named the way it is. Throughout those early years in development, the Anthem team realized that many of the ideas they'd originally conceived would be difficult, if not impossible, to create on Frostbite. The engine allowed them to build big, beautiful levels, but it just wasn't equipped with the tools to support all of these ambitious prototypes that they'd created. Slowly and gradually, they started cutting back on the environmental and survival features that they designed for Anthem, in large part because they just weren't working. Part of the trouble was you could do enough in the engine to hack it to show what was possible, but then to get the investment behind it, to get it actually done took a lot longer, and in some cases, you'd run into a brick wall as a BioWare developer. Then you'd realize, oh my god, we can do this only if we reinvent the wheel, which is going to take too long. It was sometimes difficult to know when to cut and run. I mean, at this point, it should be very obvious what the main issues were. You know, I shouldn't have to read the rest of this. I'm really not going to. But the issues were indecision. As a project lead, you can't be indecisive on everything. You can say, look, I don't know, let me think on it a little bit. But you have to set a time frame. You have to set goals. You have to, you can't really back off. You have to come up with solutions. And what it sounds like throughout this entire thing, because you're going to keep reading it. I'm not. But you're going to keep reading it. And you're going to see just how much, a simple thing like Patrick Soderlund trying out the game saying, I really don't get this. And how I think it was E3 2017, where you saw the walking Strider. You see all this stuff come up, and it looks so cool. It's gone. The E3 trailer for 2017 was literally cobbled together for Patrick Soderlund. That's it. It was cobbled together for Patrick Soderlund because he's not a gamer. He's not a high-end gamer. He's a CEO. BioWare ended up putting out a statement. Anthem Game Development, they put it out 2 days ago. We'd like to take a moment to address an article published this morning about BioWare and Anthem's development. First and foremost, we wholeheartedly stand behind every current and former member of our team that worked on the game, including leadership. It takes a massive amount of effort, energy, and dedication to make any game, and making Anthem work would not have been possible without every single one of their efforts. We chose not to comment or participate in the story because we felt there was an unfair focus on specific team members and leaders who did their absolute best to bring their totally new idea to fans. We didn't want to be part of something that was attempting to bring them down as individuals. We respect them all, and we built this game as a team. Classic PR doublespeak. They're going after the leadership. Because they didn't really go after the developers. They didn't. They went after the leadership for being indecisive. Jason specifically mentions leadership. Executives. Those are the people who did this, who screwed this up. That's who screwed it up. No one else. Developers can only do so much. If leadership doesn't have an actual plan, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. We put a great emphasis on our workplace culture and our studios. The health and well-being of our team members is something we take very seriously. We have built a new leadership team over the last couple of years, starting with Casey Hudson as our GM in 2017, which has helped us make big steps to improve studio culture and our creative focus. We hear the criticisms that were raised by the people in the piece today. Hold on, Casey Hudson. Okay. He's been back for a bit, I guess. I didn't realize that. We hear the criticisms that were raised by the people in the piece today, and we're looking at that alongside feedback that we receive in our internal team surveys. Because, those are, when you're pretty much told, fill this out, be positive, or you're going to lose your job. The grease, what is it? The greasy wheel, or the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You don't want to stick out. You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb because you just don't want to draw attention to yourself. We put a lot of focus on better planning to avoid crunch time, and it was not a major topic of feedback in our internal postmortems. Making games, especially new IP, will always be one of the hardest entertainment challenges. We do everything we can to try and make it healthy and stress-free, but we also know there is always room to improve. As a studio and a team, we accept all criticisms that will come our way for the games we make, especially from our players. Creative process is often difficult. The struggles and challenges of making video games are very real, but the reward of putting something we created into the hands of our players is amazing. People in this industry put so much passion and energy into making something fun. We don't see the value in tearing down one another or one another's work. We don't believe articles that do that are making our industry and craft better. So, what's that saying? Well, we don't like it when we're criticized. Jim Sterling got hit by this. You're a game critic. You're a game reviewer. Without video games, would you have a job? Why are you so critical of companies that just don't care? Why are you so critical? Why are you so hostile towards Digital Homicide? Why are you so critical of EA, of Ubisoft, of Activision? If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have this job, Jim. And that's exactly what they're pulling here with Jason. We don't think you actually contribute to a good, You don't contribute to a positive outlook for gaming. And that's why we didn't want to give you a statement. It's cowardice on your part, is what you're saying. That's exactly what BioWare is saying here. It's cowardice. 100% cowardice. They didn't want to comment because they know they're in the shitter. They know that they have made a lot of mistakes and this game did not meet expectations. I feel very confident saying this. It flopped harder than Fallout 76. Both games, very, very hyped. Both games. But Anthem had so much promise. Once again, because BioWare is very well known for putting out really good games. Again, Knights of the Old Republic, Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, the Mass Effect trilogy, Dragon Age, early Star Wars The Old Republic. They're known for good games. Right? They're known for it. And yet here we are. We got, the company puts out this absolutely atrocious game, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So they're trying to put, they're trying to blame the customer essentially. We don't believe anybody who criticizes us for this is doing a service to gaming in general. This is why I have said for the longest time, stop pre-ordering games. This is why I've been saying, stop expecting a good game when it comes out. Stop defending absolute garbage. Okay, let's look at the Anthem subreddit. All right, this is what the Anthem subreddit looks like. All right, they even have a mega thread for this. All right, they've put together a mega thread because yesterday when I went through, it was nothing. I'll see if I can find a couple of them. Wish I never supported Anthem by buying this game. This was submitted 3 hours ago. BioWare listening to people and making changes is another intentional lie. I don't know about that. This is not No Man's Sky all over again because No Man's Sky was made by a small indie company and Anthem's made by a AAA company. No, it's not fair to No Man's Sky. At this point, I'd be okay letting BioWare take the game down completely and relaunching it in a few months. You should not be okay with that. You should not be okay with them taking the game that they promised would be out because EA pretty much gave them a deadline, a set deadline. It'll come out that, now. But you should not be okay with that. You paid for this game and they're going to take it down for a couple of months to fix it, quote unquote. You essentially gave them $60 for a game that you are essentially playing the alpha of. We'll be generous to say the beta of. It doesn't sit right with me personally. It's never going to sit right with me personally. Just how it is. Let's see. BioWare still yet to apologize, not only to us, but the devs who spoke out in their terrible experience. Well, they're never going to. They're really never going to. BioWare Magic. Well, technically speaking, the only way is up from here. He's not wrong. I mean, that's a positive outlook. Keep those positive thoughts coming, let me tell you. BioWare is no longer a company I can support or this game. Jason Schreier's response to BioWare. Apparently this was a QA, a guy claiming to be a QA who worked on Anthem. Don't know. He deleted his account. Don't know. The point is that even the Anthem subreddit is pretty much an open revolt over this. All it takes is like somebody to put a huge, put a lot of eyes on it. And hey, guess what? Everything's exploding. Everything's on fire. That's how it is. That's going to be it for today. I didn't plan on reading the entire article. I encourage you to go read it. It's actually a really good read. It gives you an idea of just how bad many of these companies are. How bad crunch time is for many of these companies. But I'll be back. I'll probably be streaming tonight. I'm thinking of streaming a little bit of Path of Exile tonight. I'm making an overlay for that. I hope you'll join me for that. But until then, enjoy your day. I'm Spectre. I am out.